we have with us Mr. Dion Nash, former New Zealand cricketer, who's also one-time New Zealand captain. Welcome to this chat with me, Dion.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Dion, let's start at the beginning. You were a bit of I read somewhere they called you a sports nut. You were into basketball, rugby. You even played Australian rules football. Am I right? Can you just relive that early days?
Yes, yeah. Well, New Zealand, we're very strong in our rugby, of course. So I played a lot of rugby and a lot of cricket. They're the two main sports that we played growing up. But like a lot of Kiwi kids and even a lot of Kiwi professional sports people, we mostly played a lot of different sports going through school. It's not that unusual. But I actually played Aussie rules after I finished playing cricket. And I did a bit of TV work, and I discovered that game late. So I played 5 seasons of Aussie rules once I retired from cricket, because I retired quite young. I was only 30 when I retired, so I had a lot of back injuries, so I sort of couldn't continue playing at the top level. So I decided to call it quits early, and but I still had some energy in the tank. So that's when I played my Aussie rules, and I absolutely loved it. It's bit rare in New Zealand. There's 2 leagues, one in the North Island, one in the South Island. So I played in the North Island one, and I really enjoyed it. So, but I think, it was always why I ended up being an all-rounder. Really, was because I loved being involved in the sport. So I think I would have struggled to just being a batsman, for example. I just think I needed to be moving. It was the nature of how I was built early on.
I believe you were also very good at academics. Is that right?
Well, depends on who you ask. But I've got a Bachelor of Arts degree. But I'll be honest and say that I was I really was doing that to buy time to make the cricket team with my parents. So I was trying to please a few people. But I got a Bachelor of Arts in history and art history and sociology. So make of that what you will. But little funny story, after I had my first big game for New Zealand, I was playing at Lords in England, and I took some wickets and runs, and I got an offer to go and play for Middlesex, or a few county offers that year. But I also got an offer from Oxford to go and captain their side. But I couldn't bring myself to do another year of academia. I'd done my time. But I always look back and think, maybe a year at Oxford wouldn't have been so bad.
And you started off quite early in cricket. 1991, you made your first class debut. And on 91-92, you came to India with the New Zealand under-19 side, playing against a certain Rahul Dravid. So tell us about that experience of coming to India. That was the first of 7 trips to India, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Life-changing. And I think it was an under-19 tour, so I would have been 18 around there, just last year of school, just finished school. And to go and play in foreign conditions, New Zealand, I'd never seen anything like it. So, we were playing on the wickets and pitches in India back in 1991 were nothing like the ones you see now in the T20 leagues. I can tell you, they were pretty dry, barren, and real old-fashioned Indian conditions, and it was just fantastic to experience and play. And we travelled around all of India, number of places, played I think 5 one-day internationals or junior internationals and 3 test matches. Went up against Rahul for the first time, and we knew then he was going to be a special player. He was sort of the key guy to get out in their team. And I think my team, we had Stephen Fleming, we had Nathan Astle, a guy, Jeff Wilson, who went on to be an All Black. He was, and he played 1 international or a few internationals for the Blackcaps. So we had a good team. We had a number of players. There's others there as well who played international cricket. But it was one of those eye-opening experiences, to see another culture at such a young age. I think was very lucky, and probably still my most memorable tour of India, really, because we were staying in 3-star accommodation, wasn't the big flash hotels, and we really got to see India at a young age in the raw. It was fantastic.
2 years later, in '94, you had a mixed year. At Lords, you became the first player to take 10 wickets and score 50 in a test match. What was that memory like?
Oh, it was, it's one of those moments that changes your life forever. Certainly your cricket career forever. And I sort of, in a way, it was like I guess as much as anything, it was a relief. It was sort of like a weight off my shoulders. It was that first big performance at the international scene, and I could finally say, "Oh well, I'm good enough. I belong here." And so it was a sense of relief, really, and then obviously a high and elation of knowing that there was such a great game and I was performing well. But the performance was one thing, but the form that I got in thereafter was another. I really felt I was on top of my game. It wasn't to last though. I was soon to discover there were other things called injuries and suspensions and things like that, which would come and that ruined it all.
You spoke about suspensions towards the end of that year. You were in South Africa to play a couple of test matches and the Mandela Trophy, and something happened there where you, Stephen Fleming, and Matthew Hart got suspended for what they called smoking marijuana, and Danny Morrison was supposed to be involved in it in some way. What was your recollection of that? Is that a sad part of your career?
Look, it was obviously it was pretty heavy at the time. So we got caught smoking pot. To put in perspective, though, like we were three young guys who owned up. We were the hardest working on that tour. We were. I remember working out with Stephen Fleming and Matthew Hart. We were sort of a group of young guys really trying. We'd all had a couple of good successful games, and we really felt like it was our time. So that sort of gets forgotten and lost in the whole thing, particularly in New Zealand, because it was such a big headline here. And what happened was we got a game called off and we went to a vineyard, and one of the opposition team and one of our senior members in our team pulled out all this pot, this marijuana. And, so we were just bored on tour and caught in a moment, and we were absolutely involved. But and then the next day, once the sort of party or whatever had blown through, the coach and the captain and the manager called a meeting and they pulled us in. So the three of us signed up. We were the first three to be asked in. And of course, then they panicked because they'd asked the three of us, and we all owned up and said yes. And I guess at that point they must have thought, God, we're going to have the whole team. So they just decided to call a halt to proceedings, by which time we went back and told all the rest of the team what was going on. And the rest of the team went, oh, don't own up. That was stupid. We're not going to own up. And so no one else owned up. And so we sort of got a little bit hung out to dry, I guess, is probably the phrase. But look, I think, there was, in a weird way, I think we were better off, and New Zealand cricket was better off for it. I think there was a lot of learnings, a lot of lessons from it. But I also think that probably Stephen Fleming, myself, and a younger group decided, well, that's not how it should be. We should all have each other's backs, and it should be like one, not one man for himself, but we should actually support each other. And I think there was that came out of it, and I think we all became a closer team after it. So you look back and you can't change it. It happened. I don't think I'd say I would always have it happen. I think if you could, it would have been much easier to have not had it happen. But now that when I look back, I'm proud of how I presented myself anyway at that time.
That was a pretty chaotic time for New Zealand cricket, wasn't it? Ken Rutherford was left out, Lee Germon came in, Martincrowe was left out, and then finally there was some stability only after Stephen Fleming took over, and you were one of the senior players at that time in that setup. Was that a very chaotic period for New Zealand cricket?
Yeah, it was, and even when Stephen took over, really, I mean, obviously we all look back now fondly on Stephen as a great captain, but we sort of forget. I think he was 23 or 24, very young when he got the job, and so those first 2 or 3 years were pretty hard for Flem. And he was trying to make it as a batsman as well. And we were all young in the team, so there wasn't a whole lot of other leaders in the team that he could lean on. So I think, even for a couple of years after he got the job, we were still sort of very much in the wilderness, very much a young team. And I look at teams, I look back now, and I think that's one of the things people never really talk about, but how old is your team at any given time? What's the average age of your team? Because I sort of think back, and because if your team is average age is 30 or late 20s, that's a very mature, strong-minded, hardened bunch of cricketers. Despite take their ability levels out, but just as they've been through the mill, they're mentally tough and they know their job. Whereas if you have an average age of say 25 in a team, you might have a more talented side or very talented side, but you're still prone to the highs and lows. You're prone to, bad days or bad mental days and all that sort of stuff. So I think that group of players, we were a very young team, and I would have said our average age was around about 24, 25 through that period. And that made for, highs and lows, let's put it that way. But I remember playing against Australia or South African teams, for example, and they were much older, and it felt like we were boys playing men. And I think that that's one of the things I look at the current Black Caps team, and I think we've got quite a mature. The world cricket seems to be all in a much more even age group, if that makes any sense. And I think that's something to do with the success we're having.
98-99, you led New Zealand when Stephen was injured, and there was a lot of praise for you for your aggressive leadership. They said that you were much more in charge on the field than Stephen. What was that experience like, leading New Zealand for the first time?
Oh, I loved it. It was fantastic. For me too, I'd come back. I'd been injured. I'd been out for 18 months. So I'd lost a lot of my career at that point. And really probably wasn't still back to my best. I was very determined, but having had lost 18 months or even 2 years of my career, I really came back knowing how precious it was, and probably knowing that my time was going to be limited anyway. So to, a year back, then have the chance to be captain was just magnificent. And it was always going to be temporary. Flem had pulled a groin or something like that, and so it was it's a 6-week injury or something. But I do think it also probably helped Flem in a way, because I'm naturally more emotional guy, naturally more outward in my in showing my emotions than Stephen. And I think that that worked for that team at that time. And we had a couple of really South Africa were playing, and we had a ding dong battle. We beat them a couple of times in really great games. And there's a lot of sort of praise, I guess, at the time for the fact that I'd sort of that team and under my leadership had gone toe to toe with them. I think that, and I'd like to think that, Flem probably saw that and realised that, hey, he could be a little bit more, aggressive in his style. But certainly, just purely as a thing to have done and be fun, it was fantastic. And it then led to, I think, quite a good, successful leadership group. In that Flem came back and he was the captain again, and I became sort of vice captain. But it sort of also helped that I think guys like Adam Purori and Chris Cairns and Roger Toos, who were all older than me, and they probably had their noses a bit put out of joint, that they'd been overlooked for captaincy. And I think that sort of brought the best out of them. They then became leaders in the team, genuine leaders in the team as well. So I think it was sort of the changing of us being boys to sort of a bit more like, hey, we have to own this. We have to. No one else is going to do it for us. And I think from that point on, really, the whole group played some really, really good cricket. Because I think we'd all recognise that we needed to own the leadership as a group. Yeah.
You come to India in 99, 2000, and there are some funny incidents on that India tour. Number one is in Kanpur, where you went on a bike ride with Adam Perore, thinking that no one would recognize you, and you ended up having 30 people chase you around the city. And then there was an incident of you bursting crackers in front of a security guard on Diwali day. Is that the and you sort of built a relation with India, and is that the reason why you named your daughter India Lily?
Well, I've been 7 times to India, I think, like 7 tours of different types, and I've always loved India. It was just from that first tour, you sort of survive an Indian tour. You don't love it really while you're there because it's an emotion. It's smells and noise and the cricket's tough and the conditions are tough and the food and everything. But then you get home and you just go, that was amazing, you know. So it was sort of like so I've had nothing but good experiences there in terms of the moped incident, because we got locked down pretty much in a bit of a hotel compound, and we were going a bit stir crazy. So Adam and I paid two of the actually Shane O'Connor was involved as well actually, but the 3 of us paid some of this hotel staff to borrow their mopeds, and we went out underneath the hotel on these mopeds and out under with helmets on, thinking no one would recognize us. Of course, we were dressed in all of our, we were Europeans dressed in cricket sort of warm-up gear. We didn't think that far through, but before long, it was like the Pied Pipers. We had probably 50 or 60 mopeds all racing us up and down through the city. And it got so dangerous that at one point we just sort of pulled over and said, hey guys, there's going to be a major accident. You have to calm down, you know. And so the couple of the young leaders said, well, what do you want to do? And so we said, we want to go to a temple or something. Take us somewhere. So we ended up getting this escorted tour with at least 30 or 40 guys on these mopeds all through the back streets, and we ended up at seeing all these sights, and it was sort of like just a couple of hours out of the day was magnificent. And of course we weren't allowed to tell anyone, because we had to strike all these bargains on the way back. We were like, because we're making such a scene, we had to sort of agree to them all and stop and give them all sort of photos and stuff or signatures or whatever, and then say, okay, now 100 meters from the hotel, you have to let us ride back in by ourselves, otherwise we're going to get busted. So we managed to pull that off. So it was a fun day.
And what about the crackers?
The crackers was Diwali. See, people don't believe me when I tell them about what it's like to play cricket in Diwali in India. Like back then, people were throwing bombs out onto the park. You know, it was just crazy. Fires in the stand, and you must remember. I'm not sure if it's still like that now, but it was amazing to play. So we would get these little, they're literally little small hand grenades. They were so loud, and we thought it would be a good idea to let them off outside. I think it was Brian Young's hotel door. So we sort of knocked at the door as if we were room service, and then lit them, and obviously scattered down the hallway, let off all these big boom, boom, boom. But of course we forgot that the security guards were downstairs with their rifles and everything. So they were, about a minute later, they were just inundated with guys in army uniforms and rifles looking for bombs. And we're like, oh shoot, rather sheepish. It backfired. The joke had backfired badly. But but in India, my daughter, India Lily, I always joke. My mother's name is Joan, so I always joke that I was going to call her Indiana Joan, but she doesn't think that's very funny. But no, India was definitely because of India. I think it's one of those names that feels a bit old-fashioned in one sense, but I think just the vibrant nature of India and my experiences there was that's where it came from. Yeah, so definitely from my experiences and why we called her India.
That was your fun side, but then we also had an incident in an Otago versus Auckland clash where you had some argument with the umpire, and then you got suspended for a few days. What was that like?
More than a few days. I think they suspended me for 3 weeks. It was my last first class game. It ended up being. I played for New Zealand after that, but then it ended up that was my last first class game. But yeah, I still. It was at a time when New Zealand cricket was looking to clean up its act around sledging and things like that, and so they were coming down hard. I still feel a little bit bitter about it. Really, I think I was made an example of, and it was an umpire that I'd had a few run-ins with in the past. Not run-ins, but he had made it known that he didn't like my behaviour in the past because I could be a little bit lippy. So we had a bit of history, and we just. I think Lee Jamon actually got caught behind, and I said something like that's just, and he wasn't given out, and so I just said that's just cheating. And the umpire, which I really was probably saying to both the umpire and the batsman, but the umpire took it personally that I was saying it to him, and so he came over and then started writing down this book, and one thing led to another, and I swore a couple of times. But I sort of feel in a way it was a bit of all blown out of proportion, and certainly, and then so I felt bad about it at the time. This is pre having players associations that would look after you, and now you'd have lawyers and all sorts of representatives there representing you and giving you. I turned up by myself to the meeting with the umpire and the coach or the opposition coach, I think, and then it was all done and dusted. I think I initially got 2 weeks, and then I appealed it with New Zealand Cricket, and it was just before Christmas, and they got a judge, a High Court judge or something, and he was really annoyed that he had to do this thing right before Christmas. So I phoned up, and in about a 5-minute judgment, he turned my 2 week into 3 weeks, and I was like, because I refused to apologise. I was like, I'm not apologising. I'm like, this is not what I'm not here for it to apologise. What's that about? We're here to debate whether I should get 2 weeks or not. So he gave me another week.
Lesson well learned. But pretty soon, because of your injuries, you had to call it a day. How difficult was that call? Did you know heart in heart that was it?
Yeah, look, I wasn't playing that well, and the fact that I was getting suspended for getting, for arguing and swearing at referees, that part of that was the frustration. When you carry major injuries as a bowler, what people don't see, you look back, your teammates can't see that you're playing in pain. They can't see that you're really probably 85%, fit or whatever it is. The fans can't. All the people around you can't. So you end up carrying all this load and getting judged by the media or fans or their teammates or opposition or whatever is at about 85%, and that becomes frustrating because you can do better. That how you're playing is being held back through these injuries, and then of course you get taken out of the game and then you have to rehab, and that becomes really debilitating in the sense that you're just doing all this work just to get back to zero. Haven't even played a game and you're doing more work than everyone else just to get back to 0.0. That just wears you down. I'm not the only person to have gone through that. Many people who have injuries in sport or cricket for sure go through that, and I think they'd all have a similar thing, and it's a very tiring experience to go through. And so, and you look back with so much regret because you go, well, gosh, if I always remember Tom Moody, the West Australian all-rounder, and he was playing at Worcester when I played at Middlesex. And after the game, he pulled me aside one day and he just said, hey, man, you need to start looking after yourself. You need to shorten your run up. You need to get fit, get your core fit. You need to, and I look back now, and he was the only guy who ever gave me any real advice about how to get myself through a cricket career. And he was an Australian in an opposition team, you know. And I look back now, and I remember thinking at the time, I remember thinking, yeah, why is he telling me this? Is he trying to get me to slow down or something? What was this? You know, I remember being suspicious of this advice. But you know, that was the best advice if there's one piece of advice I should have heeded, it was Tom Moody way back. And I should have taken my time. I should have got fitter. You know, I should have looked after my body. I should have thought like it was a career. But it was a different time, you know. You didn't think that way in the 90s. You were just happy to be there and try your best and give it everything, you know. Different times. But I sort of feel like, on the one hand, like I look back, I'm never going to have the statistics of having played for 15 or 20 years and you know, bolstered all my statistics. I played 32 tests or something in 91 or 88 one days or something over a time with the same. I should have played probably 3 times that in the amount of time. But you sort of look back and go, well, I had some of the greatest games. I loved playing at that level. Got to play against guys like Sachin Tendulkar at the top of his game. You know, Rahul Dravid, you know, Waka Yunis, Wasim Akram, you know, played against the best and stood my ground. And those are things that you look back on and go, that's such an amazing thing to have had a chance to do, you know, to play in Diwali, to play a one-dayer in India in Diwali, you know, people, no one can actually experience or feel what that is unless you've been out there in the middle. And just, you know, I remember having a game and Chris Kens and I opened the bowling and Sachin was opening the batting. And we'd actually scored a really good score. We were like 300 and something. And so we came out in this crowd. I can't remember where it was, but it was like 3 tiers. And I remember Chris Kens at mid-off standing, and I was opening bowler, and he was standing there. And he was yelling at me from about 2 meters away, and I couldn't hear him. It was so loud, and you just can't. And with that, the adrenaline and the noise, and then of course you run into bowl, and first ball Tendulkar smashes you for 4 because you're so hyped up, you over toss it, and he hits you for 4, and what you thought was fever pitch just goes up another 100 decibels, you know, or whatever, and it just blows you. It's just incredible to experience that, and you look back and go, well, thank God I had those moments, and what I was going to say with the flip side of injury early is that injured at 30, out of the game at 30, I sort of, my hand was forced to do other things, and I sort of, you know, I'm probably grateful in a way that I didn't hang on to 35 or 36, you know, and sort of play a whole bunch of first class cricket and try to eke out a few more tests or whatever. I think that would have, I would have been a more bitter person if I had tried that route, you know.
So you slid into the selectors role and the Players Association quite naturally. Was that a natural progression for you?
Well, the Players Association had to happen. I think that's one of the biggest changes, the best changes and biggest changes to the game in New Zealand anyway, but certainly in other countries as well. It really moved us into the professional era, you know, and it gave us a voice, it gave us rights, it gave the players, it empowered the players, and I think it gave them responsibility for the game. So I think that was huge. And yeah, you know, I had retired, but I was involved with many of the other players in setting it up. And so, you know, it was needed, and proud to have done that. But the selecting was an excellent experience. Probably, I look back now and I wish I could do that now with the same group. Actually, it was Glenn Turner, Richard Hadley, John Bracewell, and myself. John Bracewell was the coach and selector, and then the other 3. And you know, that cross generation of working with 3 guys was just fantastic. I really cherished it, and I didn't have a great relationship with Glenn Turner through when he coached us, and to be able to go back and revisit that relationship in a different format. And then, today I would ring Glenn, not often, but once every 6 months and have a chat, I view him as a friend. And to work with Richard Hadley as, their consummate professional. And John Bracewell, who's got, some fantastic skills as a coach, was really insightful. So, but I would like to go back with that same group and have another go, because we nearly got it right, but probably we all could have benefited from a bit more experience. But it was certainly great to work together and understand how different generations think and different personality types think. It was excellent.
And how was the experience of playing beach cricket?
Well, it was fun. Yeah, I loved it. It was just the chance to meet the legends of the game. And, who did we have? Alan Border, Dennis Lilly, Jeff Thompson. So you're sitting in the same bus as them, just going, what is this about? We're going to a beach. I remember one thing, we turned in Perth. We turned up on the first day, and we'd all gone out and celebrated that night, first night. Hadn't played a game yet, and everyone's a bit nervous, so we went and had a few drinks with all these legends of the game. And of course you get talking, so it's a late night, so we turn up on the bus early morning. We drive out to this beach about half an hour in Perth, and as we pull up alongside this beach, there's this queue all the way down the footpath, and about 3 people deep, thousands of people. And I just had thought to myself, I wonder what they're all queuing for. What's on here today? And then as I thought it, the whole bus started like nervous laughing as we realized, oh my God, they're all here to see us. So there was 6,000 people turned up for this beach cricket day, and we were like, oh, what is this? And we got to play against, as I say, Graham Gooch, Angus Fraser, all these fantastic cricketers from different eras. It was just magnificent.
All through this journey of yours, you've had your wife, who's also a former netball captain, Bernice. She captained New Zealand. The fact that she's also played professional sport, led a side, was that good for you because you were able to deal with your highs and lows with her through that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well, we've been together since '99. So what is it now? That's 21 years, is it? Something like that. So, but married since so I think 17 years or something. So we've certainly done our time, and I think that's part of that is we think very similarly. We're both very competitive, but we also understand the highs and lows of things, and it's like marriage is a bit like a team sport. You are a team, and you have to work hard to make sure you're putting the energy into the middle of it. So no, I'm very lucky to have met Bernie, actually, and I think having those similar sporting experiences, but also Bernie had her own injuries and also retired. I think she was 28 or 29 when she retired. So we've had similar pathways. We went and travelled after we both finished sport. We went and travelled through South America for 3.5 months. And we thought, well, if we can survive travelling together for 3.5 months and like dug out canoes and, speaking pidgin Spanish and things like that, we'll see if we can survive that. We got through that. So then we decided, okay, we can get married now.
And finally, how big an influence is Rudyard Kipling on your life? Because you have a business where the stores are inspired by Rudyard Kipling's If. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, isn't it? It's crazy how things work out, isn't it? I mean, the first time I read If was my father, who was a farmer. He came home from a trip to the city and came back to the small town we lived in, and he threw on the bed, and I was about 13, and he threw this plaque on the bed, which was the If poem If, carved into this bronze sort of plaque. And he just goes in his gruff Kiwi voice. He goes, "Read that, boy." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And I remember I graffitied all around the outside of this poem, but I never touched the poem itself. I left it and I read the poem. And I was like, "Wow, it's pretty cool." And I kept this poem. You know, at that time I had a bit of banging heads with my father, so it was a way of communicating, I guess. And you know, I always remembered that poem and some of the lines. You know, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, or treat those two imposters just the same, or you know, heap up all your winnings and risk them on one turn of toss and lose, and never breathe a word about your loss. Walk with kings, never lose the common touch. All those types of things. And I just I think that's as good a set of beliefs or advice to live your life by as any I've ever seen still. And of course he's got ties to India. But when I was looking to name my business, I do a shave creams and products like that. And it's my business, and moisturizers and things. And I was looking to sort of communicate this idea of handed down advice, you know, so that it wasn't you know, icky feeling. It was natural for guys to do. I was thinking, well, what's handed down advice? You learn to shave by watching your dad or granddad or whatever. And I literally looked up from my desk one day, and there's the poem. I pulled it out I was hung it in my office. And I looked up, and it was like triumph and disaster. With the words were just like, it's almost like they'd been emboldened. And I just trademarked it straight away, and that's the name of my business, Triumph and Disaster. And if you can treat those two imposters just the same. And the last line of that poem is, "You'll be a man, my son." So I sort of feel like I've got two sons now as well, Solomon and Jet. And I try to live by that poem in many ways. And they all sit here every night, and they've heard so many stories about India, the country. And you know, if there's one place they're certain to travel to, it will be India, and go and explore it, because it's very much part of their upbringing.
Thanks a lot, Dion. It was great chatting with you, and hope you have a great career, and you stay safe and stay indoors.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. It's wonderful to connect back in. I haven't been to over your side of the world for a long time, so it's really nice to connect. So thanks for having me.
Great having you.